Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here one more time this beautiful Sunday morning. And today we have the gift of having our dear Andreia Marshall Neto with us. And she's going to share the result of her reflections on the topic life challenges and solutions. But before we invite Andreia to our virtual room, let's read a message from the book Our Daily Bread, lesson number 8, that talks about anxieties. And I'm going to read this page. First, there's a passage brought by Peter 5:7. First letter from Peter, chapter 5, verse 7. Casting all your anxiety on him, for the cares for you. And the comments that Emmanuel, through the channeling beautiful hands of Francisco Xavier, comments on this specific passage of Peter. Anxieties trigger many crimes, and they never construct anything useful on the earth. Invariably, hasty persons have all the odds stacked against them. In contrast to tormenting anxieties, nature's lessons on patience speak to every sector of the human pathway. If people were born to be anxious, it would be the same as saying that they have come into the world not as laborers to fulfill a sanctifying task, but as unredeemable souls in despair. If people would reflect more judiciously, they would recognize the opportunities for service that the moments of each day have to offer, and they would know how to look after their own endowments. Of course, the scenery changes constantly, compelling us to confront unpleasant surprises as a result of our inappropriate attitude toward happiness or pain. However, our obligation to progress daily toward the good is an essential imperative of the law. Anxiety tries to assail generous hearts because Earth's pathway hold many dark corners and many problems that are hard to solve. That being the case, let us remember Peter's prescription. Cast your anxieties about your hopes on our Heavenly Father, for the divine love desires well-being for all of us. It is right to strongly desire the victory of light, to persevere in the search for peace, to discipline ourselves for the union with the higher realms, and to persist in attuning ourselves to the highest spheres. But do not forget that anxiety always precedes the fall. Let us pray. Dear beloved Father, we are here in this beautiful Sunday morning with the blessings of your Son, Jesus Christ. And on this note, I would like to thank each and every one to be joining us in this virtual meeting, having our dear Andreia sharing her reflections, the result of her studies today with us in this transitional moment of society. let us embrace each and every one of us in the grace of our Lord Jesus and ask the protection of the benevolent angels, the good spirits that for sure will be surrounding us, attuning, having us, better saying, having us as a portion, as a part of this beautiful family that we call humanity. Thank you so much, and so be it. Now, we're gonna have our dear Andrea, but before, let's watch a video.
At the age of 10, I announced at the Thanksgiving dinner table that I was going to kill myself one day.
I didn't believe that anybody would care if I was gone. I didn't think anybody would even notice.
I remember thinking that my kids would be better off if I wasn't here.
I think I just kind of wanted all of the voices in my head to go away.
I was angry and depressed.
Total
I
darkness.
just felt
You
desperate.
should just be
You're
dead.
by yourself.
I was alone.
Nobody loves
It
you.
came crashing
I
down
just
on you.
wanted a way out.
See the paddle? That's so cool. My name is Jennifer Priest, and I am 36 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I like to spend my time with my family. I have a 5-year-old son. Edwin is the absolute light of my life. My childhood was not the best childhood, and there were a lot of traumatic things that happened to me when I was young. Nothing really got resolved until after I was 18 and went to college and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. My longtime boyfriend and I had broken up. He left a note that said, "You would be better off dead." All I could hear was the litany of, "You'd be better off dead, you should be dead, you should be dead, you should be dead." I took half a bottle of Vicodin and chased it down with alcohol, and I went to sleep.
My name is Nancy Yvonne Williams Nettles. I guess around 28, I got married and had kids and all that, and then moved to Tennessee, hoping to get back together with my husband, and that didn't work out. It was painful because I truly loved him. I had lost my job. I'd been evicted for the first time. My stuff was laying on the sidewalk. You know, living out your car in a city you don't know with 2 kids, I couldn't see any way out. I could not see any way out. You know, I knew that if I did the right amount of pills and the right amount of alcohol, that would eliminate any chance of me being revived.
How you doing?
Good, man. Happy birthday.
Thank you. My name is Richard Cole, and I live in upstate New York now on the Vermont border.
You're a good boy. Give me a kiss. You have anxiety. I know. Me too. Me too.
I think about suicide every single day, and have for most of my life. I never thought about what I wanted to be when I grew up. You speak to other 10-year-olds. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a scientist. I want to be a policeman. I don't want to be anything. I'm going to be dead by the time I'm 18 is what I thought. And so I never had dreams. I never had aspirations. I never had goals because I never thought I'd live long enough to fulfill them. So I didn't even think about them. People see all this potential. You're such a talented photographer. You're a talented writer. How come you can't support yourself? And they don't understand that mental illness really holds me back. I remember it was cold because I had this big poofy down coat on. I took a 9mm handgun and shot myself in the chest. I kind of have this vision of me falling to the ground with these bloody feathers. And it was just very peaceful. I just faded away.
My name is Jillian Shee. I'm 23, and I'm a nursing student. I live in Boston with my dog, Ellie. I think I started noticing something along the lines of depression when I was in high school.
Excuse me, Ellie.
And then once I went to college, I developed an eating disorder. I think it caused me to isolate a lot, and I lost a lot of friends that way. I reconnected with a guy. It was a very rocky relationship, and I'm not even sure the guy that I was with knew what he was doing, but I think we were being intimate, and I wasn't okay with it. He didn't really seem to care, I guess. I think that there was already an idea of suicide in my mind. I took a bus down to a CVS. I looked at the price of all the pills and I thought, well, it's kind of a lot, and then I realized it's not going to matter after I die.
You know, when I first woke up, I felt hazy. I remember getting up and being confused as to what day it was, and then wondering why nobody had come in and found me, because it had been about a day and a half. And so in some ways it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nobody did notice. And it was at that point that I was like, A, I need to call somebody. And B, I need to get back to the therapist's office because something has gone terribly wrong.
I woke up from the suicide attempt. I was still in a state of shock, and I didn't really realize the magnitude of what I had done. A part of me was kind of like, okay, that happened. I'm gonna go to school the next day. Everything's fine. I feel fine now. Once they took me to their psych unit, I kind of realized that nothing was gonna be normal again.
I think I woke up right as I was getting into the emergency room. The bullet went through my chest cavity without hitting my heart or lungs. Everybody in the hospital, all the doctors, all the surgeons, all the nurses, everybody came to visit because there was no medical explanation to explain how it happened. But I wasn't like happy that I lived, kind of just numb and indifferent.
When I woke up, I was so angry. I mean, I was mad. Like, I was really mad at God. I'm trying to alleviate the pain that I was inflicting on my kids by leaving this earth so they wouldn't have to deal with me anymore and deal with the fact that I couldn't take care of them. And I wake up in this hospital alive. I was angry at God. Then I was mad at myself because I can't even get this right.
I'm very lucky I have supportive friends. My family tries to be supportive, but I don't know that they know how, or they have their own issues surrounding me, so it's hard. The suicide attempts in the past, they don't know how to react to that, or they don't know how I'm going to react to things now. So I understand that it's touchy for them, it's hard for them.
Happy birthday to you.
I have severe suicidal ideation, but that is different than being suicidal. But 15, 20 years from now, when I become incontinent or I'm facing dying alone in a nursing home, yeah, I'll take my own life. I will end my life on my own terms, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Music is a big part of how I get up every day. It is what runs through my veins. The words are, earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. Earth has no sorrow but heaven can remove. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot cure. And because of my own belief, I believe that we do languish We have wounded hearts, and sometimes we're constantly kneeling and praying, but doesn't mean things are gonna go away. And that's what this song, this hymn talks about. I use music all the time. I honestly use it, and I know that it is a healing mechanism, but I also know sometimes it has to be coupled with something else.
It's really fun, huh?
Yeah.
It's fun to make music.
Yeah. I really like it because I have all the psych on the bottom.
It does have a little shark on the bottom. You know, everybody thinks when these famous people kill themselves, oh, how could they do that? They have everything. And they don't realize that it doesn't matter what you have. It's just your brain attacking you.
In our community, in the Black community, that is like, you do not talk about that. Eventually, I realized you got high blood pressure, you're taking high blood pressure medicine. Wait a minute. So you can do that. But because I have a mental illness and I'm on medication, oh no, we don't talk about that. Oh, no. You don't want to deal with it, but the reality is if you don't deal with it, then it's going to get worse, just like cancer.
You want to go for a walk?
What I'd like people to know is that you don't know what anyone else is going through. And so if you come across someone that you just say, that person's a little odd, or they seem off, or whatever it is, don't jump all over them. You don't know. They might be having a bad day. They might be on the edge of something horrible. And just a smile from you or you just listening to them can make a difference.
He has helped me through a lot of stuff. You my therapy dog, huh?
I hope that people see that even if treatment can seem like a hurdle and seem to last forever, that it doesn't. I was very into instant gratification, I guess then, because I wasn't getting anything that I wanted when I wanted it. Like I wanted to go back to school, I didn't want to be in the hospital. But now that I'm like kind of past that, okay, well maybe there's still a future.
I know that there are lots of people who are survivors of suicide. I think my biggest goal, period, is to make it so that it is a conversation that we can have without it being stigmatized and judged.
How many bananas do you think we need?
3.
3 bananas? You're doing a really good job. I do consider myself a survivor. I attempted suicide. By some miracle, I lived. I tell my story because other people should know that on the other side, things do get better.
Okay. I should be dead. And I'm not. And now I believe I had a purpose.
You do play that well. Got it on.
You got a gold star.
Gold star. You look ready. I would have missed my beautiful son, who is amazing. I would have missed his first steps and his first word that we worked so hard to get. I would have missed him testing for his yellow belt and passing on his first try. There are so many things that I would have missed. To be here for those moments, it feels amazing. And there's nothing I want more in this life.
Good morning, everyone. Good Sunday morning. Thank you for bearing with us as we decided to open our Sunday conversation about this topic, which is life challenges and solutions, but focusing on the aspect of suicide awareness. As we know, September, or Yellow September, as some people have come to know, is that month where we bring the notion about suicide prevention. And it is interesting to see the testimony that was brought on by those who survived suicide and what we could learn from them. Interestingly enough, we I remember somebody said to me that it seems like talking about suicide is a bit hard for some people. And I started reflecting about that. Why is it so hard to talk about suicide? Why is it so hard to say, hey, I've thought about committing suicide? Or I have ideation of suicide, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I am suicidal, much like that gentleman talked about in the video that was that we brought in the beginning. So, as was stated, every year 45,000 Americans die by suicide. The research specified or has an estimate that there are at least 25 suicide attempts for every person who actually is successful in taking their own lives. So it is something that we need to talk about. Spiritism provides, or better yet, the Spiritist centers provide, they should provide, a safe place to mainly open up a space to talk about it, share, where people should be able to ask for help. And we know that we offer the fraternal assistance at the Spiritist Center, which is not to say that we are psychologists or psychiatrists, but we are going to find that Spiritism, when it actually arrived 164 years ago with the Spirit's book, and then later on with the supporting books such as the Gospel According to Spiritism and Heaven and Hell, the Medium's book, all of the books, we see that Spiritism offers us a view about the topic that is really important as well. On the part 4 of the Spirit's book, for those of you that are watching right now, it may be new to Spiritism, the very first book that opened up the Spiritist body of knowledge, the Spirit's book, is actually has 4 parts. And the 4th and last part of the book is called Earthly Joys and Sorrows. And there is an item called Dissatisfaction with Life and Suicide. So I'm going to share here with you guys some of the content brought on the Spirit's book, specifically on question 957. Let me see if you guys can see my slide. There we go. In which Allan Kardec asked the benevolent spirits in general, what are the consequences of suicide on the state of the spirit? In which they answered, the consequences of suicide vary widely. There are no set penalties, and in all cases, they are always related to the causes that produce them. One consequence from which those who commit suicide cannot escape, however, is disappointment. And I wanted to go back because I failed to bring you guys here a phrase that I hope some of you can keep in your mind as our study keeps going, which is about the miracle of life, in which Joanna de Angelis, in the book Life, Challenges and Solutions, tells us that living is a sublime challenge and living wisely is a blessing that is available to all who resolve decidedly to advance, overcoming personal limitations and attaining communion with God. It is a very powerful statement from this benevolent spirit that we bring here. I'm going to leave the page open so we can keep reading and we can think about this. But the problem is that a lot of people who contemplate suicide, who have this ideation about it, who might have some idea as to, life would be better without me in it, as some people stated on that video, or I just can't find a way out. We see a phrase here in which there is a word that is really important for us to consider. She talks about those who resolve decidedly to advance, those who make an effort to advance, but sometimes it's just too hard. And so when Allan Kardec asked the question in general, what are the consequences of suicide in the state of the spirit? And they answer that it varies. We open the book, Heaven and Hell, the second part, in which testimonies are offered of spirits who committed suicide and came back to tell us about their conditions in the spirit world. Many people don't know about this book, or better yet, they don't study, but it is really important because it's basically a real example of spirits in different conditions in the spirit plane, in the spiritual dimension, talking about what we can expect based on how we lived and based on how we died. So we are going to find some of the testimonies of spirits that are in their happy state, or spirits that are in their average condition, spirits that were hardened or were criminals, and yes, spirits who committed suicide. And they come back to tell us about their suffering, about their disappointment in realizing that not only they were not able to extinguish their lives, the situation actually became worse than that in which they were living. Allan Kardec is going to state to us that religion, morality, and philosophy, usually when we see it, it condemns suicide as being contrary to the law of nature. Spiritism doesn't come and offer a view about suicide to cause fear or to have that imposing idea of eternal punishment, but rather to clarify, to talk about what is it that we can actually achieve by committing suicide. He says, all the religion, morality, and philosophy tell in principle that we have no right to intentionally shorten our lives. Spiritism also says that no one has the right to take their own lives. But why is it that we don't have that right, you may ask? Why is it that we are not free to put an end to our own sufferings when it just gets too bad, when we just can't stand it, when our hearts are bleeding? So the Spiritist body of knowledge comes to address these questions and show through the actual examples of those who have succumbed to it that suicide is not only wrong, not only does it violate the divine laws, but it is a reckless act that brings no benefit to the spirit. In fact, the results is going to be quite contrary. So it is not according to some theory that Spiritism teaches us this. Spiritism has set actual examples right in front of us to address it so that we can have an actual understanding of what we can expect should we commit suicide. We are going to bring an example of a spirit who committed suicide in the book Afterlife. Afterlife is a book that was compiled by Nilson de Souza Pereira. It can be found at the website Leal Publisher, lealpublisher.com. And it is a book that contains also testimonies of different spirits that were actually assisted at the Spiritist Center in Brazil, with Divaldo Pereira Franco as the medium and others who were there also as mediums, as those who dialogue with the spirits. They actually compiled this book for our understanding about spirits and the different conditions in the spirit realm. So the spirit comes to us and says, I committed suicide not to suffer, but I suffer because I committed suicide. I tried to escape life to be free, but I am in prison because I sought a false freedom. I tried to shorten my time of misfortune, but in reality, I lengthened it instead. I am the living example of a human paradox. However, the drama that culminated in a limited tragedy was only the upshot of an arbitrary life, which throughout the years was characterized by little passions, all marked by the innumerable instances of selfishness and arrogance. In here, the Spirit tells us about the two different vices that in reality should be combated, should be watched, should be addressed as we journey through life. Selfishness and arrogance were the two conditions that he talks about. He says, when I was young, I was a victim of spinal tuberculosis, or Pott's disease, P-O-T-T's disease. The type that affected my body was not only physical in nature, it hit my soul deeply as well. A soul which, in fact, was the cause behind the external physical anomaly resulting from a very serious crime that I was unaware of at the time, since they were hidden behind a veil of reincarnation. Of course, in here we are going to understand that he's talking about the law of cause and effect, that great law that governs the universe and finds us wherever we might be. So from a previous existence, whatever the case was, the consequences that were brought on to the present reincarnation was actually having to endure the expiation of the spinal tuberculosis that hit him at that moment. If we want to understand a little bit more about how the law of cause and effect plays a role on the reincarnation, and we see some of the anomaly, or we want to understand a little bit better about the afflictions that we endure, we would like to suggest reading the book Missionaries of the Light. It is a very amazing book in this series of Andreia Lewis' life in the spirit plane or in the spirit world, in which he brings us information about the entire reincarnatory process. And another book that we like to suggest is The Gospel According to Spiritism, in which it addresses the present causes of afflictions and the past causes of affliction. So he says, I dragged myself around in a world like a modern-day Quasimodo, harboring mute resentment against those who had sound bodies that moved with agility and grace. I wallowed in the bitterness that I had built up concerning a natural phenomena, giving in a dimension that it did not actually possess, because I received abundant tenderness and love from my family, the kind of love which is like moonlight for those in need of comfort. I believed I was miserable, more so than anybody else, which rendered me more rebellious and bitter toward all people and things. When I reached the age of 30, he continues, I was stricken with cardiac insufficiency. The disease affected the benevolent pump of my heart, and it was a natural effect of POTS due to the disintegration of the bones. So he talks about being tormented day in and day out with lengthy bouts of dyspnea. So despite his Christian knowledge, he was spiritual, he was religious, he sought to actually commit suicide. He says, actually, suicide was always in the back of my mind ever since I was able to understand my condition in my teen years when the disease struck harder. And so, tortured by the disabilities that he had, he planned to actually depart the physical plane, in which he was very successful. The problem is that he actually woke up in the spirit plane feeling worse than when he was in the physical body. He talks about a madness that took place, that he not only felt the body, the situation that he had actually caused to it over and over and over, that painful physical pain, as if he was actually still alive, but he also heard the voices of those who actually guided him towards committing the act, because we also understand that obsession, that spiritual influence, negative that is, plays a huge role in actually maddening, making the situation even worse for those who are suffering. And so he comes back to tell us, because he felt that the only way to receive some type of consolation, some type of relief, was through the prayers of those who made up the group in Brazil, the medium mystic group in Brazil. And so he did. He was assisted, he was rescued, and later on he returns to talk about his progress in the spirit plane. It is interesting, right? Because when we see spirits coming back to tell us, all of them without fail will talk about the suffering they endured, even greater in the spirit plane than that of the physical one. Not one of them came back to say, yes, I found relief. Yes, I am better off than if I had just endured a little bit more. And we know of cases of spirits like those who actually were not successful in committing suicide people who actually came back to talk to us about what they maybe saw awaiting them in a condition that they talked about, a hellish spirit realm, that when they had that near-death experience they were exposed to, and when they actually came to terms that their suicide attempt was not successful, they realized that a change needed to be made in their actual lives, in seeking assistance, in seeking some type of professional, perhaps professional assistance to help them deal with the pain that were consuming them. Many people bringing the drama, bringing the pain of enduring maybe a childhood abuse, be it physical, sexual, or emotional. Many people bringing within them, in the archives of their souls, the conditions from a previous existence as suicide spirits, meaning suicide spirits who commit suicide. Sometimes they actually repeat that over and over and over, such as the case of what we learned of the man who had no arms and no legs, and he was blind. And he lived his life outside. Sometimes people would put him outside to enjoy nature. And he was always in an upbeat type of state of mind. And one would look at him and say, my goodness, how is it that this person has the strength to be happy, to look at life and be able to offer others optimistic ideas about life, about suffering, about the challenges, and offering the type of solutions that actually worked. And so it was shown to him, and though he shared with us that in a previous existence, in many different existences, he had committed suicide. And the only way and he actually asked for the trial to be able to endure life's difficulty would be to be impossible for him to commit suicide. No arms, no legs, no eyesight, only being able to speak. And not only that, bringing within the spirit that idea that he needed to, what Joanna de Angelis talked about, decidedly advance. It is the power, the will, the willingness of the spirit that has this idea that life in the physical body is temporary, that everything does pass, just like in nature. Marcelo, in the beginning of our talk, brought this beautiful, beautiful example that in nature, everything follows a progress, patience. And when we look at a flower blossoming, it goes through its different stages. First, finding itself as a seed in the mud, in the soil, in very hot conditions. It feels that there is no air to breathe, but then it receives the nutrients, it receives the rain, it receives the sunrise, the sun rays, and it is actually able to break free from the soil and ascend high as the form of a button. And then it opens, it blossoms, but everything in due time. And so is the spirit. Sometimes we feel like that seed underneath the soil. It is hard to breathe. It is dark. It is stifling the air. And we feel that there is no way out. But eventually everything passes. And it brings about opportunities when the spirit is able to sustain, to withstand those difficulties and break free from that situation and blossom in a very beautiful and different way. The thing about it that we learn is that no reincarnation, no life was actually planned out to fail. None of it. Suicide was never part of their reincarnatory planning. The spirits that helped us to construct how our present life would be, once again, we suggest the reading of the book Missionaries of the Light. Chapter 13 talks extensively about this. They do so knowing what we can stand. They do know exactly the kind of burden, the kind of weight that can be placed on our shoulders based on different existences and based on the law of cause and effect. When we talk about trials and expiations, we are going to find that it's as if we are that student that was actually guided by the parent holding our hands when we were little, and they put us in front of the gate, as if symbolically speaking, when we are ready to reincarnate, and say, here, go to school. You're ready for it. You already reviewed all that worked in the present, in the previous existence, all that did not work, and we are going to be with you until the very end. And that is a truth that we can actually find contained in the Spiritist philosophy. So the question that comes from Allan Kardec is, where does the dissatisfaction with life come from? Where does the dissatisfaction with life come from, which takes hold of some individuals without any plausible reason? And so the spirits answered Allan Kardec, it is the effect of idleness, lack of faith, and usually satiety. Listen to this, how interesting it is. Joana de Angelis, last year, May of 2020, she released a book through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco called Empty Lives. The book is actually about to be released, and she talks about the aspect of idleness. And she talks about how often we are not very mindful of how we spend our time. She talks about fun and futilities, meaning what is it that we are seeking? Are we seeking to constantly have pleasure? Are we seeking to constantly have fun? Are we seeking to constantly stay attached to the materialistic immediate ideas that have held us back for so long? Are we just willing to be idle without seeking something that is meaningful to do? So she asks, how many Spiritist books have you read in the last month? Now, I know some of you that are connected right now are avid readers of titles, whether it's Spiritist or spiritualist. So, but she asks that, meaning put your mind to be filled with that enlightens, as opposed to being idle. She says, let go of the machine a little bit. Leave the virtual world and partake in the real one. Take hold of your life by the reins of it and be in control. This is what she talks about, because the idea of idleness, this lack of faith that she talks about, and even satiety, are some of those things that can actually guide someone to be dissatisfied with life, saying life has no meaning, there is no objective. What is the existential meaning of my life? But if one is not advancing decidedly to find out what that is, it's going to be a little bit hard, right? So someone stated that with Spiritism, they actually were able to get out of the idea of suicide. Spiritism, rightfully understood, according to Allan Kardec, is a safeguard against suicide. Why is it? It is because Spiritists, or better yet, Spiritism, offers the possibility for people to see things of the world from a much higher point of view. He says life is so short and fleeting that the troubles seem like nothing more than the unpleasant incidents of a journey. It's just a bump on the road and it will pass. Things that in other individuals would produce the type of violent emotions affect Spiritists that have not only comprehended the content, but overall sincerely felt it in their hearts. They know that life's sorrows are trials that lead to advancement if they're able to endure them without complaining. That's hard, I know. So if you need to complain, complain. But they say that the true Spiritists realize that once able to endure the difficulties of life, they are going to be rewarded according to the courage in which they were able to bear them. The conviction that we get gives us the type of resignation that is a safeguard against despair, against the anxieties. Marcelo read the message about anxieties. It is a safeguard against anxiety, which is very frequently the cause of insanity and even suicide. Furthermore, the spirit communications offer the Spiritists the view of the fate of those who intentionally shorten their lives, shorten their days. And the picture is so grotesque, it is so filled with pain that it actually comes and offers a halt, a stop sign that says, think a little bit more. think about it. So the numbers of those who have actually deterred at the brink of suicide is actually great once we start studying about the effects of Spiritism in their lives. So Allan Kardec comes later on with a question and says, let me share my screen, sorry about that. What is to be thought of those who take their own lives in the hope of arriving sooner or later at a better life? This is a very interesting question, right? What is it to be thought of those who take their own lives in the hope of arriving sooner at a better life? So the spirits answered, a lack of good sense. Let them do good, and they will be sure to reach such a state. Their suicide will only delay their entrance into a better world, and they themselves will ask to come back in order to complete that life that they cut short through a wrong-headed idea. A wrong, no matter what it might be, never opens the sanctuary of the elect to anyone. Suicide and insanity is one of the items that is studied extensively in the Gospel according to Spiritism and the Spirit's book. And it is one that we keep on suggesting reading, because what Allan Kardec brings us in the benevolent spirit is that the calm and the resignation acquired in the manner of looking at the life, at our earthly life, and in faith in the future. When we understand the aspect of the immortality of the soul, when we understand that we are the authors of our lives, of the pages that we have before us, we are the one writing, it gives us a serenity that is the best preservative against insanity and against suicide as well. In fact, they say it is certain that the most cases of insanity are due to the troubles produced by the difficulties that people do not have the strength to bear. And so in the chapter that talks about prayer, the spirits tell us in the Spirit's book that when we pray, when we actually fill our souls with religiousness as in reconnecting, there are religions and there are religiousness, that feeling of connecting with something greater, with the Creator, with our Father above, elevating the frequency so that we can hear the voices of the benevolent spirits telling us to go on, and stifling the voices of the negative nature that is guiding and encouraging us towards suicide. We are going to learn from them that it gives us the strength. People feel that their problems have actually decreased in size, that they're diminishing, but in reality, they're still there. It's just that the person is filled, engulfed, immersed in the wholesome energies through prayer, that it uplifts and upholds them during the trials, during the tribulations of life. This is how Spiritism comes and allows us to enable things of this world, accepting them not with indifference, but rather with the understanding that they're there to offer us an opportunity of growth, of advancement, if we are able to endure them. And so it also gives us information on how to actually bring the strength into our own existence, that it actually protects our mind from the distresses that would actually jolt us towards committing suicide. Because a lot of times, remember, people who try to commit suicide, they're actually repeat suicides. Just like Ivone do Amaral Pereira, Yvonne Pereira, she is the author with the Spirit Charles of the book Memoirs of a Suicide. And she brings us this beautiful book that is actually a work of art that offers us a true view of the spirit plane of those who commit suicide and where they go, the valley of the suicides, if we want to call it this way, and how these spirits are actually repeated suicide. She calls them offenders, but in reality, they're repeated suicides. And actually, she talks about the need to strengthen oneself, because she herself, she was a repeat suicide. And the life that she had was one of sacrifice. It was one where she was able to endure a lot of the difficulties. Even when suicide came through her mind, she never actually wanted to act on it. It just came. So a lot of times when we are not protected, something comes and jolts us to that reality of something that we committed in a previous existence, wishing to repeat the very same act yet again. So Spiritism fortifies one to be able to not actually act on it. Allan Kardec comes to us and tells us that this belief, the simple doubts about the future, materialistic ideas, in other words, are the greatest incitements to suicide. And Spiritism comes as the present idea of the promise consoler, the third revelation, to assist us on dematerializing the soul, meaning detaching us from matter as much as possible. Some people live their lives where there are some challenges that arise because all they're concerned with is seeking pleasure. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter when, it doesn't matter whom we hurt, including ourselves. And so Spiritism comes to assist us with that. It talks about how in current society, and let us just take a look at how people live today. You know, the aspect of being a influencer on Instagram, but what are we influencing people to do, right? Because the propagation of the materialistic idea is what Allan Kardec calls the poison that injects the idea of a suicide into a large number of individuals. So if I am on Instagram, and I like Instagram, I utilize it to propagate Spiritism and try to do some beautiful messages. But what is it that it does sometimes? People incite others to have as many followers as possible. And today, especially with the youth, if you are not liked, if you are not beautiful like other people that you follow, if you're not popular, it gives you the idea that you're not worth it, that you are not liked, that you are not loved. So these are illusions that are propagated by a large number of individuals who actually also become so entangled in this web that they feel that the more followers they have, the more views, the more likes, the more loved they are. And so they're seeking for love in the very wrong place, because when that stops, they have no idea where to go to. Spiritism comes and offers us an opportunity to erase the doubt and change the outlook of life. To seek for the one who only had 12 followers, but who was the greatest type of influencer that actually divided our history into the before him and the after him. And we are talking about Christ. We are talking about the one who not only offered us the type of solutions for the challenges that we encounter, but he actually upholded us, and he actually encouraged us, and he offered us the view in saying, you are actually in control. Your faith saved you. He never said, I saved you, removing the idea that one has the strength. He said, your faith has saved you, telling us that we have the power, that we have the strength, that we are able to overcome the difficulties of life. He walked along with us, seeing the misery, and he still does it today, as in the teaching contained in the Gospel of Matthew when he says, I will be with you until the end of times, meaning he will wait for us. When Christ came as a second revelation and offered us a promise consoler, as in Spiritism 2,000 years ago, he brought us the certainty of a future life. He brought us this idea that if we shorten our lives, the result that we seek is actually going to be the opposite. We are going to incur even worse situations for our own lives. The teachings that it comes brings us this idea that suicide brings nothing but disappointment. And it brings us this idea because we have the testimonies of the spirits that come and tell us. So here's one of the things that we want to talk about. Spiritism does not diminish the thought that it is painful, that life is difficult. We're going to end our reflections today, bringing Joana de Angelis yet again, actually She is the spirit friend in the gospel according to Spiritism chapter. Be perfect under the item, be patient. And she talks about life. She says, life is difficult. I know. It is composed of 1,000 nothings, which are pinpricks that end up hurting us. But we must consider the duties imposed on us, the consolations and compensations we receive in return, and then we will see that the blessings are more numerous than the sorrows. The burden seems less heavy when we look to heaven than when our brow is bent toward the ground. Courage, my friends. Christ is your model. Let's talk about this. She comes and she says, life is difficult, I know. Spirits that are benevolent, that are at a higher state of frequency, of mind, of progress than we are, coming to say they know what we are enduring because they've walked the pathway to reach where they have reached. So they come to say, I know about this, but be patient, have courage, be with Christ, your model. Try to follow him, the one who was crucified, misunderstood, attacked, and until the very end was faithful. We have the ability to do so. Christ said, you are God's, and you can do everything that I do and much more. It is the proposition challenge that allows us to identify ourselves with a God within, that there are qualities, that are strengths that lie within us, sleep within us. And when we realize that we possess such resources, we can light up a fire that is going to consume the inner voices that states, you are not enough. You are not worth anything. You are not loved. You would be better without, people would be better without you in their lives. It actually stifles those voices and says, I am enough. So what we propose with this talk today is to understand that we were born to succeed, that we were born to overcome the hurdles along the way, that every step we take is a victorious step towards the ascension of the spirit, that there is a meaningful lesson behind each difficulty, that a happy existence is not necessarily one that is short or long, but one that has been transformed into a message of joy, of well-being for the individual and even those around it. It is going to offer us a view that sickness and other problems of the aspect of unhappiness is not an invitation for suicide, but rather an invitation by the physical body and life telling us that it is necessary to be more lucid and aware, and that we should, yes, seek psychological assistance to find that stability, the stability that teaches people how to act regarding the everyday challenges, how to confront situations that are less than favorable, to try to perceive the meaning of events that is happening in their lives and find within themselves the quality that is going to arise from seeking that stability with a psychological assistance. This is why we ask people that if you're ever in crisis, that if you're feeling like you are about to hurt yourself, that if you know someone who actually are thinking about suicide, who is in crisis, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at the number that we are actually showing here. Contact the crisis text line by texting 741-741. And know that everyone at the Conscious Living Spiritist group, the workers, are here to assist, are here to talk and hear them out. We are here. Marcelo, Susanna, myself, Abigail, we are all here should you need assistance, to talk, to be heard, to be understood. Remember what Joanna de Angelis stated in that message. The burden of life seems less heavy when we look to heaven than when our brow is bent toward the ground. Courage, my friend. Christ is your model. Christ, that psychotherapist of our soul, not the crucified type of Christ, the one who is a friend, who is a doctor, who came to us 2,000 years ago and stayed and telling us that he is with us until the very end of time. That is going to be the one guiding and strengthening us every step of the way. Know that you are loved, that there is a cloud of testimonials of spirits that are there to encourage. There is a reason why Mary, his mother, is so present. It is because she is the one who assists the spirits of suicide. If you are feeling that way and you don't know how to pray or whom to pray, pray to Mary, Jesus' mother, and ask her for assistance. Let us pray at this moment to our Master Jesus, our friend of all time, elevating our thoughts to our Father, our Creator above, who created us to be destined to achieving happiness, who is here to show us through the signs of nature that patience is the key, that there is a need of understanding, that there is a balance, a harmony in the universe, that all we have to do is look outside. When it is too dark in our souls, let us go outside and look at the sun. Let us close our eyes and receive the rays, feeling the warmth as that wholesome embrace of the benevolent spirits. If it is nighttime, let us go outside and look at the stars, look at the moon, realize the greatness of the universe and that we are part of that we are part of creation, that there is a love that we need to feel, that comes from above, that envelops our whole body, our whole soul, and reminds us that we are loved, that we are infinitely loved, that the trials and tribulations of life will pass. Just like the storm, the sun shines again. That we need to be mindful of the responsibilities and duties imposed on us prior to reincarnation, and that we were given the strength to overcome them at all times. Be faithful, he said to Joanna de Cusa. Jesus said that to her when she was at a home where love was not found. And he said, be love. Love your family as you would a child in need of assistance. We are that child sometimes in need of assistance. Let us be kind to ourselves. Be patient with ourselves. If we made mistakes, forgiveness. Forgiveness for the offenses. Let not be consumed by guilt and remorse, but rather understand that every mistake is an opportunity for growth and never a reason to take one's life. Life comes with challenges, and Christ comes with the solutions. Let us attune to him, the benevolent spirits, and our Father above. So be it. My friends, we wish you all a very beautiful week. Remember what we said. We are going to repeat yet again. If in need of assistance, if you're in crisis, know that you have the National Suicide Prevention. Know that you have the Conscious Living Spiritist group, friends and family, to assist you at the time that you need. Have a beautiful week. Thank you so much, and so be it. Thank you for being with us.